Okay. Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thammasat University Library. My name is Pim Pakwan. I'm a librarian at Thammasat University Library. Today, we are going to have the English seminar about writing professional emails. If there are any questions during this seminar, please type them at the chat box in Zoom and also the participants on YouTube Live. And Mr. Benjamin will answer them later when Q&A session. Okay, so Mr. Benjamin, I think we can start.
Start video and then mute. Good morning, and thanks for taking some time this morning with our subject. Before I start talking about the professional videos, I just wanted to invite everyone who isn't aware. Whoever is part of the Thammasat community means anyone with a Thammasat ID number. It can be a student or staff or lecturer. To know about the Thammasat abstract.
Share your screen.
What?
Share your screen.
Where's that? Oh, yes. Screen. The Thammasat abstract editing service, which is a free service, no charge. And you can find that just by Googling Thammasat abstract. And then what you have is in Thai, short texts, including abstracts, are returned in about 3 working days, free of charge, with advice and suggestions, and that can be helpful. Now, the other question is if you have a problem or a question about that service or related services, you can always write to Kun Pakwan at this email address, which is listed on the Thammasat University Library website. Or if you need to reach me, there's another web page, which is the Facebook page. It's a group, Read Kapen, which is short book reviews of English language books. And if you Google Read Kapen, you get the Read Kapen homepage on Facebook, which shows the different books that are being reviewed. And then here is my email address. So you can just write a note to either me or to Kunjun if you have a question or issue about anything having to do with English. So let's get started. Professional emails. One little thing, I think, when we have the challenge of having to write a professional email in English, it's a good idea to think of the Tipitaka, the Buddhist scriptures, which have the general rule of treat other people the way you would like to be treated. And that idea is mentioned in different religions in different ways. And it's called the golden rule in some religions: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But basically, the point of the professional email is try to write a professional email that looks like something that you would like to receive as a professional email. Now, because when we get a professional email, the first question is, well, why is this person writing to me? What do they want? What do I have to do? Why are they bothering me? And so in some cultures, we may think, if we look at an email, for example, in some cultures, it's considered polite to have a sentence about something and then a sentence about something else and then a sentence about, and then finally getting to the main point. But that actually is not good for email culture. Email culture is different, and what's polite and respectful is not wasting people's time because everyone's busy. And when we receive an email, we feel that way too. We're busy, we have many things to do, we have many emails to respond to. So the most polite and the most respectful email is one that tells us immediately what we're expected to do. And that we can do by being very clear in the subject line about what we want or what we are trying to discuss. And then in the very first line of the email, for example, I've seen many emails in Thai English that start, my name is, and then people give their name. That's not necessary. Not necessary in a professional email because your name is just a couple of lines down. You don't have to say in the beginning, my name is. So forget about my name is. If in some cases it can help clarify what you want to do, you can mention, your job or your professional responsibility. But again, I would suggest that everyone put in an automatic return address, which has their job title and their address and their professional affiliation, wherever that may be. And another way to reach you, a telephone in this case, and remind them of your email, even though they have it when you send them an email. So that a lot of information that you might ordinarily have to put in the body of the email here, in fact, is already there. And it's not necessary to repeat it because the email should be concise and as short as possible for two reasons. First, because time is money and you don't want to waste time of the people who have to read it, but also because it's just a mathematical question. The more you have to write in English, the more likely it is that we'll make a mistake in English. So if we write fewer words, chances are we probably have a happier result than if we have to write many words. So let's go on. To the next, okay. Now, basically, the question is, what's the difference between the personal emails or Line or direct messaging on Facebook or other types of more familiar messages that we send and professional emails? Basically, whatever everyone's individual relationship is with friends, usually on Facebook, the message might be, oh, should we have Krispy Kreme or should we go to Swenson's? It's more of a friendly, you're not asking someone to do something for you, at least not all the time. Whereas in a professional email, it really is, will you please do this for me? And please do it within a certain time. There are certain requests that are made in a professional email. And that is the purpose of a professional email. So that it's a very different kind of message. We want to be polite and friendly, but not too relaxed because we often don't know the people, or even if we've communicated with them for a while, we may not know them, intimately. Maybe we've never met them. So we're asking for something in a professional email. Now, the difference between a business letter and a business email is because simply a letter, which people still do write business letters even today, but they put in the address of the mailing address of the person they are writing to, which is not necessary in an email. And in general, the email, as you know, has much less necessary information. It's a much shorter, briefer message. So, and unlike letters, you don't have to date an email because an email, of course, once you send it, already has not only the date, but the time that it's sent. So that's done automatically. You do not have to put in the date. Whereas if you're writing a business letter, it is expected that you put in the date. And it's very useful to have that date and time, because when you reply to an email, it sometimes helps to say, in response to your kind message of, and then you give the date, copied below, you might want to put within parentheses, copied below, and then go on to say what you want to say. You remind them that they wrote to you first. So let's move on. Now, this is a sensitive issue because who's writing? I know an Ajarn who told me that he gets messages sometimes from his students, email messages, and he says they sometimes forget to sign the email message. And then he looks up for where it's coming from line, and it's something like, I like ice cream at hotmail.com. So it's impossible to know who wrote the message. Now, imagine, in addition to that problem, if you have a Thai language email address, and many of the people who registered for this seminar have a Thai language email address, and you are sending the message to an international office, those people cannot read Thai. It's very difficult to imagine. I realize it, but most of the people in the world cannot read or speak Thai language. So if we are trying to communicate with people outside of the kingdom, it helps a lot if we either open a new email account or just register in the email account we have in Roman letters, our name, so that they can have a sense of who this is. Because if they get an email address in Thai language, they can't even really put it into their address book if they want to, because you may know that in Yahoo Mail or the other mails, it will alphabetize it strangely. If it's a different alphabet, it may put them either before or after all of the other Roman letter email addresses, and it becomes a mess. So if you are sending regularly emails to foreign readers, it might be useful to have your own Roman letter, like this one was given to me by the library, but Roman letter email address, so that at least foreigners will be able to read it or remember it or put it in their address books. Now, don't forget to sign the email. And as mentioned before, when you sign, if you have it automatically put in, it doesn't take any time at all. It's just every single message that you send has all of this information, as it should, clearly identifying who you are. And you can change your salutation. You can change, if you don't want to say thanks, all best wishes, you can say something else. Hope you feel better soon, if someone has just told you they're ill. Whatever you wish, but at least there's something here which can be a time-saving device if you send out many emails. Now let's see. Right. Now this is the issue of how to be friendly, but also respectful and polite. And sometimes when we send professional emails, we're asking for a job, or we're asking for a fellowship or an internship or something like that. So if we send a message like, I like ice cream, or I eat snacks all day, it can sometimes seem a little silly to the person receiving, especially if it's a very serious, graduate school admissions committee, or so. It's best to use your own name if you can open an account, or just have a separate area of the account you already have, where you can just put your name as part of the email address. That would probably be best and look the most formal and respectful. because when you're writing to your friends, they love you, and it doesn't matter if you say I eat snacks all day, they probably know that you do. But if you are writing to people who don't know you, it's probably better to be most serious. Some email accounts have photos attached to them, and some people put a K-pop star or some other star attached to their email account. Well, don't send that to foreign people who may not recognize the K-pop star and who may think that's you in the image. It can be very confusing. So really better not to have images attached, but if you have an image, if you must have an image attached, probably better to have your own image attached and not someone else. Let's see. Oh, and also some of the like Yahoo and some of the others, it's possible to activate the service where they stick on quotations onto your emails. You may not have seen this, but it's usually some literary quotation or something like that. Again, too much confusion adds material to an email that is not necessary. So the goal is to keep the email message itself as brief as possible and not to add more things onto the email. So I think that can be easily blocked or just not activated. That's usually not a very serious problem. Now, it does help, though, to mention to the person you're writing to, like, for example, I'm just going to give you sort of an example. Britney Spears. So the subject of this message is Britney Spears. Dear Ms. Spears, as a university expert in English language and international exchange, I am pleased to accept your, whoops, let's get that fixed there. Like the kind invitation to your wedding. So there, Brittany has invited me to her wedding, which happened today, I think, and or yesterday, and I'm accepting. Now, maybe it's not even necessary for me to remind Brittany what my professional description is. So I can just say, this message is to accept the kind invitation to your wedding. So very brief, but says immediately what it's about and what you want to do. You are accepting the kind invitation. That's it. Maybe that's all you need to say. You could say something like, thanks very much and all best wishes on this auspicious occasion. So you made an special sort of comment about the fact that it's Brittany's wedding and you want her to be happy. And then you sign like that. But as you see, you may have had contact with people, but then they probably answer lots of emails all day and they may not remember you. So it's sometimes good to say what your professional affiliation is, Thammasat University, if you work for Thammasat, or whatever else you do. Now the subject, some people make the mistake of writing, I'll show you what that looks like here. Or even worse, they do urgent, like that. That doesn't help. It doesn't help because it basically people have different ideas of what urgent means. What is urgent? For some people, it might mean do it today. For others, it might mean do it by the end of the week. Better to be more specific. If you need an answer, you could say, please reply by Friday. So let's see how that looks on our email account. Please reply by Friday. That's if it's really a panic, if you really must have an answer. But in most cases, it doesn't help to say urgent, and even the please reply by Friday, unless it's a real emergency. I think generally speaking, people, especially in other countries, tend to be fairly quick about answering emails, professional emails. And some people, particularly in America, they seem to live next to their email accounts. And so they'll answer you even before you might expect it. Even very old Ajars, are quite alert about answering emails. And of course, as mentioned, the subject line is a very important clue about what you're writing about. Now, when you do your subject line, the thing is not to get involved with spam filters and have the Yahoo Mail or whoever it is, or an office email account, have them think that you're writing a spam. And when they have spam detectors, if they see all capital letters, or sometimes if they see all lowercase letters, they think it might be a spam, and they put your message in the spam folder, which means that it will not be seen, of course. Also, you do not want to ever send a URL in your subject line, because that will absolutely go to spam. So you don't do this. You don't want to put that in your subject. That's not going to help. Write in your words whatever it is that your subject is, but be clear about that. Now, if you've already written back and forth to someone and you have more things to say, sometimes you just look in you do a search in your email and you find the person's email address, which is very convenient. And you might want to send them back your past correspondence, which can also be useful. But if it's about something else or something new or something different, be sure that you change the subject line, because you want to make it clear you're not talking about the old thing that you discussed with them 3 months ago or last year. You have something new to discuss, and this is why you're writing now. So the subject should be the most recent, and feel free to change it each time when the subject of your message changes. That helps a lot for people to understand what it is that you're trying to tell them or ask them for. Again, this is about urgency. There's a way to put in a colored exclamation point, which again is it might seem like a good idea, but it really doesn't help. If you try to say high priority, either people will consider your email high priority or they will not. And a colored exclamation point will not really change their minds. Now, there is, even with the wonderful convenience and politeness of email, because as you know, emails are things that we look at when we want to. It's very civilized. It's not like beepers or messaging on phones. It doesn't, grab our attention. We go to it and we answer and look at the emails when we have time. But there are times when we have to sort of use the phone, even if we're desperately trying to use email. And that is if there's a confusion, if for some reason what we have written in the email is not clear to the people who receive them, or if you absolutely must be sure that the person sees the message right away, and that would be, if you have to cancel an appointment and you just want to make sure that they get that message. Also, if you have to give bad news in any context, it is more sensitive to give the message by speaking to someone than by email. So those are the times when a telephone message is probably more suitable and respectful and polite than an email. Now, the question is, how do you start the email at the very beginning? Well, you can write, dear Miss Spears, you can write, hello, Miss Spears. I would say it all depends on your own personal preference. Dear Mr., Ms., Professor, Doctor. And always you can do a quick Google search for how names should be written in different Asian countries, because as you know, in Thailand, we use the first name, Ajarn Chayaporn. But in other countries, you may use the last name. It depends on the country. And you could say, you know, in Myanmar, how are people called? Or in, Indonesia. And then you'll find out, if you don't know already, how you should refer to people. And that's just a matter of seconds. Again, you start with dear, Dr., Mr., Ms., and then the last name. So you do dear Dr. Smith, but not the full name, like dear Dr. Rhonda Smith, or dear Rhonda Smith, or dear Smith, or dear Dr. Rhonda. So dear Dr. Smith, the title and the last name, at least in English, is the customary way to do it. It just looks odd if you don't. And actually, in some cases, it would just be wrong. If you did Dear Smith, it wouldn't really be very polite. In all of these, people will realize that you're not a native speaker of English and will, I think normally lessen their expectations, so they may not be offended or hurt. But still, it's always better, if possible, to be polite and pleasantly surprise people. This is a key point that I always try to stress. It only takes a few seconds by Google. Google is our friend, and we can Google the name of the president, the chairman, the dean of the admissions committee, anyone else who's in an executive position, and address the email to that person, because it's very humanizing to send an email, professional email, to someone showing that we acknowledge their humanity, we recognize their humanity. And it's not like we're sending it to an office. It's not like we're sending it to chairman or president, as if we don't care who the person is. By showing that we care about the individual and we recognize that there is a person working at that job and has that responsibility, it really gives a much better impression. And we can just see, I haven't prepared this before, so I don't know if it's as easy as I would like to think, but you can do a quick Google search, not dead, but dean of the Harvard undergraduate admissions committee, just something like that, and see what you come up with. All right, Dean of Admissions to Harvard. So if you're applying to Harvard, you can write to Mr. Greg Roberts, Dean of Admission. Or you could write to Ms. Joy St. John, or to Ms. Jessica Marinaccio, Dean of Undergraduate Must-Be Affairs. And so you Googled Dean of the Harvard Undergraduate Admissions Committee, and there you have all of these names. So instead of writing Dear Dean or Dear Admissions Committee or whatever else you might do, you can actually get a name. And you may be sure that if you write to Dean Roberts, Dr. Roberts, Professor Roberts, he may not personally see your email message. It may be his assistant who answers those email messages. But you will have made a nice impression, and then they will pass along your message to whoever else can help or whoever else should see it. But the fact that you've shown enough interest in the structure and the organization of whoever you're writing to, whether it be Harvard or any other school, or any other company, or any other professional organization, it shows that you care. It shows that you're interested, and you're, willing to take 5 or 10 seconds, however long it takes, to actually get that name. And it's the most current name because they would change that on the internet. If suddenly Mr. Roberts left his job and someone else took over, you would get that on the Google search. So that's a type of little way of looking more professional and looking smarter, really. Now, I know sometimes this appears in Thai English language textbooks, but it is no longer, first of all, with all the respect due to people who write textbooks, which is a very difficult task, the people themselves who write textbooks and the ones who publish textbooks will be the first ones to tell you that textbooks become outdated. Sometimes they're outdated even by the time they're published, but always they require adjustments and revisions. Textbooks are not written in stone, and things that were true a few years ago, not everything, but some things change with time. Now, language is and language usage is among the things that change regularly. So what was used maybe 50 years ago or 100 years ago is no longer valid often in English. So no one says in English today, dear sir or madam. If you can imagine, you see your friend at the Pinkal Mall, shopping mall, and you go over to them, you say, hello, sir or madam. I mean, you would never say that to a person, right? It doesn't exist because either it seems like the person you're talking to, you can't tell whether they're a man or a woman. They look sort of like somewhere in between, or it makes it seem like you are not looking carefully enough and you're not paying attention so that you somehow confuse whether the person is a sir or a madam. So in other words, you're not pleasing anyone if you say dear sir or madam. So forget about dear sir or madam. I'll just take that out, to sort of show you it really should never be used in modern, in contemporary English. It is old style English, and dear sir or madam, no. So we don't use that. And we also don't use to whom it may concern, which is also in Thai language textbooks in English education. Because why don't we use it? Because it seems to be the lazy solution. It seems to be, well, I'm sending this message out and I really don't care who reads it. I couldn't be bothered. It's not interesting for me who you are. Just you figure it out who should look at this message. Now, you may think that, and that may be what you hope when you send a message out. Let's say you sent the message as we described to the dean of the Harvard admissions committee, Dr. Greg Roberts, Dr. Roberts. So you're hoping that they will forward your message to whoever can help you, but at least you put a name there. If you say to whom it may concern, you really are saying, I don't want to spend 10 seconds to find out what your name is. I'm not interested in you, Dr. Roberts or Dr. St. John or Dr. Malinacho. You have no interest to me at all, and therefore I'm just going to say to whom it may concern. So as you see, it gives an impression of somewhat not being involved. So you don't want to say that because it shows that you don't really, respect the people. It's not polite enough. So try to use a name whenever possible. And sometimes, actually, if you're writing to an office, or especially to a corporate office, if they don't give the information immediately on their website, sometimes a phone call, and you ask for their HR department, human resources, and you ask for the name. Who is the head of your human resources division? Who is the head of your, and you will get the name. You can ask them to spell it for you. And that little bit of extra time makes an email that really gives a very good impression. Finally, the style question of not writing, for example, you would not write, "Dear Britney Spears." If you're writing to Britney Spears, you would not write "Dear Britney Spears," because although you do see that sometimes in England, in British English, but generally speaking, it's not considered polite to do that either, to use the full name of someone. So it would be "Dear Ms. Spears." If you have a long friendship and correspondence with Britney Spears, and she has already written to you signing her emails Britney, and writes to you using your first name, then it's okay to write to "Dear Britney." Yes.
We have someone who raised their hand.
Has a question? Okay, let's see. All right. Who's that?
มีคำถามหรือเปล่าคะ
ครับขออนุญาตถามคำถามได้ใช่ไหมครับครับ
ถามภาษาอังกฤษได้เลยค่ะ
ครับ Professor, what about when I am not sure who to address? How can I know which name I would put in "Dear"?
In terms of your email address?
Yes. I mean, when I may apply for like Harvard Law School, and I'm not sure who to address. Which name am I going to put in the "Dear"?
Oh, so which of these, being Greg Roberts or Joy St. John or Jessica?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you're applying for admission, then you're fine to write either Greg Roberts or Joy St. John, because both of them are Dean of Admission. You can't go wrong. In other words, if you choose Greg Roberts, and it turns out that really Joy St. John's office deals with all the international student admissions, whoever answers or looks at Greg Roberts' emails will forward them to Joy St. John in the office. So you won't make a mistake if you do either. But it would be not great to, as mentioned, to just sort of say "to whom it may concern" or "to admissions committee," because one of the things that we will perhaps on another seminar, this is the very first one that we're doing of this kind for the library, but how to make admissions committees really believe that you care about them, that you've thought about them, and that you really have investigated all of the wonderful things about them, and you know about them. And part of that is who works there. And so either you can use the dean, or this Joyce St. John is the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid. So either one would be fine. I don't think you can really make a mistake in that case. Because yeah, that's okay. Because once it goes into an office, they will sort it out. If they're not supposed to get it, they will send it to someone else. But yeah, so I think it's fine to just if they list a number of names, send to one, whichever you prefer. You may not wish to send to the one who's the most important, namely the one who is the director, because maybe you think, oh, that person's too busy. I'll send it to the person who's number 2 or number 3, because maybe they have more time, or maybe they're there more often, or it depends how you feel, but you really can't make a mistake. Now this is a sensitive question where we may offend even if we do not intend, because in Thailand and Singapore, in a few Asian countries, but not the rest of the world, people still call Miss women who are adult. Now, for the last, more than 50 years, in most of the world, it is Ms. It is Ms. MS. Dot, not Miss or Mrs. Why? Well, if people call themselves Miss or Mrs., of course, it's fine and in fact respectful to reply to them as Miss or Mrs. However, The reason that Ms. was invented, MS, is because unlike Mr., MR, right? Dear, you're writing to Brittany's husband. Well, his name is not Mr. Spears, but let's just pretend it is. Dear Mr. Spears, right? If you write to dear Mrs. Spears, you know she's married. If you write to dear Miss Spears, you know she's not married. Now, in a business situation, or even in an educational situation, there could be problems with, is this person married? Is this person not married? Why do we care? Why do we have to know? Oh, and then you can, whatever you are, married, not married, you can lose just because some people have different attitudes or opinions, which are not correct. But that is how people think sometimes, and used to think a lot in the old days, but still think now. There's still people who are, have attitudes about women that are very old style. So they may think, oh, well, she's not married, she's Miss. Why should we hire her for the job? Because the minute she gets married, she'll leave the job. Or she's just here to meet a man, then she'll get married, have children, and then she'll leave the job. Or they'll think, oh, she's Miss and she's already this age. Maybe there's something wrong. Why isn't she married? Or if she's Mrs. and she's married, they'll say, oh, she probably only thinks of her children and cannot focus on the job the way we want her to. She won't be able to do her studies as well. People will make up all these very false and misleading impressions based on whether someone is married or not married. And so for this reason, it is much healthier. It is much better to just not get involved with whether someone is married or not married, especially in a professional email. So what you want to have is Ms., and that's it. Nobody's business. It's not their problem or their business. If you are a woman and you're married or you're not married, you are Ms., and you do not have to tell people, at least in an international business email, you do not and should not tell people whether you are married. So it's Ms. You don't want to get involved in the gender politics of it all, which is rather regrettable that still is the attitude, but in some countries, it really is many decades behind the rest of the world, and that's how it is, So you still see Miss, which I think is probably time to revise that, at least in some countries. And also, sorry, did I hear someone else?
I think someone have
A question. Okay.
Miss Pantari.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can I go back to the first part of the seminar about we shouldn't start the email with introduce our names, and I think I do it wrong my life. So
Well, that's
yeah,
okay.
I will introduce my name and I tell the teacher because I'm a student, when I send the email to my teacher, my name is blah blah blah, and then I specify my data such as my student ID or the sections, because I think that teacher may be confused, who am I? But I heard that you said that we should not say the data like that in the starting of the email. So my question is, can I put those my data such as student ID or section in the start at the email, or it should, or in the end of the email?
Well, if you can see the email that I put on the screen here, right? If you like, you can put it in your subject matter, your subject line, put your name and student ID. That way it really stands out. And you can put it at the end where you have your name. In fact, if your emails are mostly going out to the faculty and to the adjarns, you might want to just have your name and student ID in all of your messages. It couldn't hurt. So that way, at least it's very visible in the email itself, and then you don't have to put it on the first line. Because that's important information, but it's not the most important. Of course, you should sign your email. You have to identify yourself so that people can answer you or know who is writing to them. But basically, the first line of the email should be about what the current business is. This is about the final exam happening next week. Can I bring my cat as a comfort animal to the exam room? You know, something like that. So in other words, maybe they have your name, my name and student ID is here. And maybe you have your name and student ID here. So you've got it twice. I mean, that should be more than enough. Or you could even just put in the subject line, animals in final exam room. And that's, you know, so you basically saved a lot of space and you haven't had to say the same thing several times. And if you see an email like this, again, think of the Tipitaka and getting back the kind of emails that you would like to, you're sending the ones you would like to receive. You get the email and you don't have to spend time wondering, why have they written to me? What do they want? Why are they bothering me? It's immediately clear. This, or you could say this is about, or this message is about. And that's it. You know, that it immediately becomes clear what you want to know. There's your question, and then they can answer no, yes, if you want. That type. So that makes life easier for the person you're writing to.
Thank you so much. That's
Okay,
really
no
clear.
problem.
I love your example.
Yes. Did you have another question?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you for giving me a chance. And my question is about dear sir and madam. When you were explaining, I couldn't catch. And could you please briefly summarize?
Oh, why you shouldn't say dear sir or madam?
Yes, because most of the time I am using dear sir, madam.
Yeah, well, you know, look, all of these suggestions, by the way, are just friendly advice. You know, they're my recommendations. I'm not pretending that what I say is law. And besides, as you know, you don't know me, I don't know you. I'm not giving you a grade. I'm just giving you suggestions. So you can accept or reject my suggestions. Feel free. And in any case, when you write professional emails, like when you are doing homework assignments or classwork, you have to sort of please the adjourn, you have to please people you're writing to, maybe an admissions committee. And they are the main people you have to please in addition to yourself. So you shouldn't worry about pleasing me. So my feelings are not hurt if you want to continue to say dear sir or madam. However, if you get a message, again, think of the Tipitaka. If you get a message, the Buddhist scriptures, if you get a message saying to you, dear sir or madam, you might think, oh, maybe they don't know whether I'm a man or a woman, or am I not clear about that somehow in public, or why are people confused about whether I'm a man or a woman? It's just strange. It's strange English, at least in our time, in the year 2022, to write dear sir or madam. And in any case, I mean, women are not called madam. In French, they're called madame. But in English, you don't really say madam. Madam is used, the term actually is now in modern English is used for like a mama-san, the woman who works in the bordello or the prostitution house. You know, it's not a Madame Butterfly you have from 120 years ago. There's an opera called Madame Butterfly, but you don't say Madam in modern English. And as I say, if you can spend a few seconds showing the people that you're writing to that you really care about them as individuals and that you look upon them as discrete human beings who have an identity and are not just an office or a professional role, but they actually have a name, how much better? And you look much more intelligent. Because really, if you say, dear sir or madam, you are saying, I don't care what gender you are. You don't matter to me. Your human identity is of no importance to me, whatever you are, dear, whatever you are. It really doesn't make a good impression, at least in contemporary English. Maybe 50 years ago it was acceptable, possibly. Even then, I think it was a little old-fashioned, even 50 years ago. But a lot of what is used, I think, around the world in terms of English, and maybe is still in textbooks, is very old style. It's at least for what is, when I mention these things, what I'm talking about is basically standard international English language usage in professional emails. And things have changed, whereas it might have been easy to just do dear sir or madam many years ago. Now things, have changed, and it's nice to change with the times. We don't want to seem like we're very old style, So, as I say, do whatever makes you happy. But I would advise not using dear sir or madam. And I mean, if you need, further arguments and more extensive, because we don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you're in doubt, why not use, and then dear sir or madam, whatever the thing that you're thinking of using is, why not use dear sir or madam? Probably there'll be someone in, is it appropriate to use here? Avoid dear sir or madam, because it is impersonal, outdated, and not gender inclusive, you see. And you should avoid using dear sir or madam. And there are many of the, you go through, is an outdated salutation, why you should not use dear sir or madam. And then they give you 7 chances of what to use instead. There's no excuse for dear sir or madam, business writing blog. So all you have to do is, if you have any doubt at all, is to Google why not use dear sir or madam, and you will read for hours about how terrible dear sir or madam is. You may not have heard about it before, but as in a lot of cases, I have to say, and it's not just Thai English, it's all English. English that Americans use is sometimes terrible. English that British people use is completely awful. Language is a delicate, sensitive issue. And a lot of people use it wrong, let's face it, and it goes on, to whom it may concern. This is another, don't forget, So you get into trouble, they say. Get into trouble if you say dear sir. So I hope that answers your question. I don't want to make you feel bad, but it kind of, if you Google, you will have lots of reasons of why not to use that. I don't want to spend a half hour on just dear sir or madam. But even if it's your habit, with anything in English, I mean, I don't know if you're a university right now, a university student, or what is your, affiliation, but if you are here at a university, probably it's to learn. And one of the things we learn at a university is we're always learning. Something we thought was the case or was true a little while ago is no longer true. It can be a little, sort of surprising, or we're not expecting that. But that's part of being at a university. Otherwise, we wouldn't be at a university. We'd be somewhere else, and we think we know everything. Of course, unfortunately, a few people, even at a university, think they know everything and don't want to learn, which is too bad. But most people at a university are there because they're curious and they're interested and they want to learn. And they want to find out what the latest information is. And that's why they're at a university. Their brain is not dead, you know. So whenever you're in doubt, just Google it and they will tell you all these different websites, you know, why not use? Okay, I hope that answered that question. Now let's see. Yes, so this is part of not just Thai style, but in many different cultures. People think, oh, if we have to be formal and respectful, means we have to write long words and we have to sort of long sentences and show that we're very elaborate, but not really, because the most respectful and polite we can be is to write in a way that people will understand us. And so it really is much better to be plain, use short words, simple. Don't use the very long word, which we might spell wrong, because it never helps. It does not make a good impression to use a very big word and then spell it wrong. Better to use a short word and spell it right. And if one of the difficult things, I think, for every student or anyone really, is to remember that someone who we do not know will read what we write. Someone often has to read what we write. Now, when we write a term paper or an exam paper, we probably realize, oh yes, the Ajaran will read it at some point. But it's much more difficult when you write, for example, a thesis or an abstract, to really think, oh, someone out there, or even a research article, someone out there is going to read what I'm writing. People out there who I don't know will read it. And so when we keep that in mind, what we write is often much more plain, simple, clear, and not all of these words, you know, with the long sentences, which are sometimes really impossible to follow. So do not somehow think that if the sentence is long, you look more intelligent, because the best writing in English actually has the short sentences, and the most difficult, it is much more difficult to write in English in a clear, plain way about sometimes very complicated things, but it's much more difficult to write in a clear, plain way than to write just long, long sentences that go on and on. This is basically what I mentioned before, is that put what you want in the first line. This is just about overall tone. Try not to be negative. You know, if you're constructive, it's better. So if you want the answer by an answer from them in your professional email, and you want an answer by 5 o'clock, the end of the business day, it's better to say, we would very much appreciate a reply before 5 p.m. today to meet our deadline. Because that is much happier sort of person than, if you do not answer by 5 p.m. today, we will miss our. It almost sounds like the person is, we're yelling at the person or threatening them. If you do not answer, you know, try not to be negative. Sort of don't be not, you know, and negative. Just say, we would very much appreciate. It's a friendlier way of saying the same thing, being constructive rather than critical. And again, better to say if possible, because in English, as in many other languages, there are many different ways of saying the same thing. And if you can say it without saying no or not or don't, it just sounds like a nice, happier, and more pleasant email, more respectful, more polite. Let's see. Right. Now, this is another question about seeming friendly and polite. No underlining, no capital letters, no italics, no red letters, because red, unfortunately, in an email, it looks like you're screaming at someone. Also, capital letters are often, the person who receives capital letters can look at it and say, oh, they're really yelling. You don't want to give that impression. Another big problem for, I think, many students is if they look at a PowerPoint presentation or an email that looks like this PowerPoint, for example, they say, oh, how boring. It's just black on white. It's very dull. But the point is, in an email or even in a PowerPoint, actually, you want to just be legible. You want something that would look clear and that people can read and get the meaning. Because if you put in different colors and, it's all very, unless you are a graphic designer and you should show your artistic talent as part of your application, perhaps to graduate school. If you're just applying, let's say, to an internship which has nothing to do with graphic arts, they don't care really about how many colors you use in your professional email. Much better to just be clear and plain than all the different other alternatives, even if you really find it boring. The person who receives the message will be grateful that it doesn't look, more difficult to figure out what it is. And then as another little observation is, it's very polite to say thank you. Thanks for your help, thanks for your message, thank you again, thanks for all your hard work, because we want to show that we appreciate their efforts, even if they have not done anything yet. Because if you thank them in advance, thanks in advance for your kind efforts, it means they actually might make an effort. Because if we thank them, it shows we respect them, we expect them to do a good job. We don't want them to say, to give the impression that they're someone who we have to threaten. If you don't do this by 5 p.m., rather, thanks so much in advance for your kind understanding and responding by 5 p.m., something like that. We appreciate their efforts, even if they have not done anything yet. And if our email should not be too long. If we have already discussed what the subject is and we've told them what it is, that's it. Send the email because it's done. If we have to talk about different issues, mention that in the email, say in the subject heading, or maybe at the very beginning. Let's see where we're this message is to discuss 3 topics related to the final exam on Friday, or whatever it is, and then you put colon, and then you can just number them 1, 2, 3, and then it makes it clear that you were expecting 3 answers. Final exam, and you see as we've changed the subject from animals to final exam. So on Friday, so we changed the subject. Not used to this keyboard. And there we are. Please see below for 2 questions about our proposal. Again, if you spell out that you have 2 questions, you remind them that they have to, or that you would appreciate 2 answers about that subject. And again, numbering so that they can answer. 1, 2, 3, in answer to your questions, thank you for your kind question. Here are the answers, 1, 2, 3. Now, this is a problem that I see in Thai English quite a lot, that people who are very educated and often very intelligent, but who do not have perfect English, standard international English writing or standard international English speech, nevertheless, because they have graduate studies, will use Latin terms and other foreign language terms, viz, which means namely, i.e., which means for example. Now, the problem is sometimes these are used incorrectly, which isn't good. It does not make a good impression that these Latin terms, because they're of Latin origin, are used instead of plain English. No one really needs to use viz, which is an old Latin term, when you really should just say namely. And no one should use i.e., because they could easily say, for example. It just seems somehow to be more cool or more educated to use these Latin terms. So the general rule I like to suggest is, unless your English is absolutely perfect, please do not start writing Latin or other languages. Better to stick to English and try to get all of that correct first, and then you can put in other terms into your professional email. Because one of the things you don't want to do is give the impression of someone who is at the same time not perfectly commanding all of the skills that might be required in a job or an internship or higher studies, but also that you're sometimes somehow pretentious, that you think that you're very high-flying intellectual, and using these terms which you might then use wrongly. Better to avoid them entirely and just be plain. It works out better in the long run. And these are more of the writing style issues, which I don't really have to get into. But this is helpful, which, as I mentioned before, Google is your friend. Now, even if you think, or especially if you think you know how to spell things, Google everything. Google it all. Because let's say you're applying to the PhD program in mathematics to Harvard, and you apply writing mathematics to Harvard. Now, if you do that on Google, they will immediately tell you, no, you mean to say mathematics to Harvard University, not mathematics to Harvard University. So Google will immediately tell you what you really, the way you should write that. And that is very useful because then you can copy it and paste it. In general, it helps if you have to do an email of more than a line or two, or even any email, if it's an important email for you, that is a professional email, write it on a Word document first and do spell check. Then even if you're not sure, because spell check just suggests things and you may not know or you may not be aware of which alternative to use, Google it and it will tell you. This all can be done in seconds. It doesn't take more than a minute to do all this sort of thing. Because you may be a very brilliant mathematician, but if you write and you spell mathematics wrong and you spell Harvard wrong and you want to go to Harvard to study mathematics, I mean, they will understand you're from a different country, that English is not your native language, that you could be an absolutely wonderful mathematician and still make these mistakes. You know, it happens. But still, it will make an even better impression if you spell everything right, particularly the name of the institution, the company, the university, the organization that you're applying to or that you're writing to, and the field of study, because I've seen often, believe it or not, I've seen the field of study that people spend years studying spelled wrong in English, probably because, I would say, people are so familiar with it, they stop paying attention and they just write it out and they're not really focused on how it is spelled in English. Most of the time, perhaps they spell it in Thai language. And so if you think that you know it by heart and you don't have to worry about it, that's a danger sign. That means you really should Google and spell check and make sure that the familiar words or the ones you think are familiar are in fact spelled correctly. Don't be deceived by the fact that you use them all the time to think that necessarily you must be spelling them correctly. So let's move on. Yeah, and if you write the sentence and you do a Google search and you just put it in quotes, or a phrase even, let's say Dean of the Harvard Committee, and okay, that did not match any documents, so that's not a good sign. But if you want to do a search for, let's say, in quotes, Harvard Undergraduate Admissions Committee, all right, there you have 4 results. So in other words, it exists in English, right? Any sentence or phrase can be put in quotes, and you see if it exists or if it has been used in English. And even with spelling mistakes, that you will get some answer. If it does not exist at all, chances are you would be better rearranging your sentence or using different spellings or different phrases, because what you have put in there or what you were intending to put into your email probably is not standard international English usage. And, there's a tendency, especially if you're in a rush, to want to invent your own romanizations. And that is a problem, because if you're talking about a Thai term or not, but you don't want to be the first one to spell out in Roman letters a word or phrase that really has a different standard spelling. People won't know what you're referring to. So it is much better to try to find on Google the way other people have spelled the same word, perhaps a Romanized Thai word, or the name of an institution, or a subject matter, or a Thai term that is sometimes used in Romanized form. Spend a few seconds to find out the most common spelling of a place or a name of an institution, and your email will probably be understood much more easily by whoever reads it than if you didn't do that, if you didn't make that effort. And when you end the email, we're already at the end of the email. Sign with your name. Here we are. The name, first name, full name, if you want, your student ID. In this case, I put the Read Ben page, which I mentioned before, the one about the our reading group from the Thammasat University Library, where people can, again, you have my email address here if you need to reach me. I do not have on the email address, I do have, this is our Thammasat University Library blog, which is, again, mostly about, it's all in English, but it's about, new books, open access books for free download. This is all part of the Thammasat University Library blog, different events that we announce, new books, and that you can find, again, by Googling Thammasat University Library blog, and here we are. This is the blog itself, and if you click my name, then you have all of the English language posts that are about, if you want to practice reading English, and about the different books that are in the library, and different other services. But I do not mention, if you notice, on this return address, I do not mention the abstract editing service. Now, why is that? That's really because I write to a lot of different people, and a lot of them are not Thammasat affiliated people. And since the abstract editing service is really only available to people with a Thammasat ID, it's a Thammasat community, students instructors and staff. So for those people, I mean, I do not mention in every email that I send out the Thammasat abstract editing service. And those people can simply Google Thammasat abstract. They get to the page. It's in English, but it's easy to change that to Thai if they want. And then go to the service page and submit, you know, whatever they want to submit. Abstract. Upload your email, the purpose of your, and again, if you're not a Thai language speaker, you can choose English. There's an English alternative, which I'm having trouble. There it is. An English form for the same form, or Thai, whatever you prefer. And then you choose the file and you upload it. So when you have put a full return address on each email, then you don't have to worry because they can always reach you. They can get back to you. And that's what you want, because if you're writing about a job or an internship or something else that you would like them to do for you, it is good news when you hear from them. It means maybe actually they're going to do what you wish. They're going to accept you into their internship program. They're going to accept you into their higher studies division, something, whatever it is, or that you might be hired for an interesting job. So you want them to reach you. Now, one thing that is sometimes seen, and not just in Asia, people write and they sign all best wishes, the TU library. Now, that's not ideal because, in fact, a person wrote the message. A library cannot write a message. An office cannot write a message. So if you sign in a personal way with a name, it makes a much more friendly and individual impression than if you sign the office. Thammasat University Library Cataloging Division. Let's say it's even more, you know, specific. But even here, it's better to have a person's name. And then if you want, you know, the division is fine, but always a name, because then the person can say, if they want to respond, oh, dear Benjamin, I got your message. Because if it's just thanks the cataloging division, it's not so easy to write back. You say, dear cataloging division, you know, you don't know how to address the response. So again, to make things a little simpler for the people you're writing to, you would include your name. Now, we've already reached almost 11 o'clock, and maybe if we have any more questions, because, I mean, that's...
Okay, I think you can go on. But we still have a lot of questions from YouTube.
Well, then I think let's do questions, because either we can have a second class or do something else, because there's a lot of material here that, you know, I think we won't get through all of the PowerPoints anyway today.
Sorry.
Can we write dear officer if we don't know whom we are addressing? Well, I think it depends, you know, dear officer seems a little strange, unless you're writing to the police or it depends who you're writing to. If you mean someone who has an official role at a university or at a company, no, you would not write in standard idiomatic English. You would not write dear officer. Even if their name was, you know, officer, because some people, you know, that's their professional title. Or here's somebody called Officer Benjamin Cooper. So you could, he's a police officer who was killed in a shooting, sad to say. You could write, when he was alive, you could write to him, Dear Officer Cooper, his name, right? Or Dear Mr. Cooper, his name. But you would not just write Dear Officer in standard idiomatic language. And I think, again, the question is, how many seconds do you really wish to devote to find out a name? You know, and if it doesn't really, believe it or not, it does not take that long to get a name. You can, I don't know, some head of Yale University Library. Let's say you want an internship at the Yale University Library. Here we are. Mrs. Barbara Rockenbach, or Rockenbach, is the university librarian starting July 1st. Well, that's very soon. So we can send her an email of congratulations. Dear Dr. Rockenbach, dear Professor Rockenbach, dear Ms. Rockenbach. We would not write Dear Librarian or Dear Chief Librarian. Just wouldn't be considered polite. And the fact is, it's so easy now to Google it. It takes, you saw how quickly it is. I just had to type out, maybe it took 2 seconds to get this information. Why would we not use that name, right? It shows that we are aware of what's happening at Yale University, that we're aware of the recent staff changes, and we care, and we're involved, even though it's so far away. And it makes a good impression. If, for whatever reason, you know, maybe in other countries, such information is not shared so openly. So maybe if you're trying to write to the Beijing University Library, the faculty in China, for example, are not listed. No, see, here we are. We have the name of the Beijing Normal University librarian, the director of the library. So we would even in China, we would be able to cite the name and address the person individually who is the head of the library in Beijing. So in fact, there's no excuse really, because even in China, where they don't often announce full staff lists for whatever reason, it's more a question of being discreet, I think. Even there on Google, you will have the person listed. And I think it just shows that we care. We're willing to do the extra 5 seconds of research that it's involved. I mean, you know, it really is no effort at all. And we know so much more if we have to write to these people, who they are, what their name is. It's really gratifying to us and to them to show that we're interested. And what's the next question?
We have a situation
Right.
where we have the contact with salesperson of one company for the first time. We don't know their name. What should we address in the email?
Okay, well, that is a good example. And I think I mentioned before of why not phone the company? Call the company on the phone and say, who is your salesperson? Who is the person I should be sending my email to? Who should I send the email to? And that way, because you've actually spoken to them, if possible, you will have a better chance of getting an answer, because the person who answers that maybe will be the person who answers the phone, will have an idea, oh, just send it to me or send it to this person. And that person will send it to the, you know, or they may give you the name. Maybe they don't know the name right now. Maybe it's someone they're still hiring and they haven't decided on the name. But you should, by asking and getting a little bit involved with the company or the office, whatever it is, it could be a university or it could be a company, you will show that you're interested in them, that you're interested in recognizing them as human beings and individuals, and not just as dear salesman, which is very anonymous and somehow slightly dehumanizing. It somehow does not entirely admit that someone who works at this place is a human being with an individual identity and a name and as a person, it's much more charming and pleasant to receive an email, even a professional email, with a name attached. And even if it's not exactly the right name, it will make a better impression than if you just say a general sort of dear chairman or something like that. Anything else?
Okay, the next one. If we firstly contact any embassies for visa section and their names are not shown in the website, and we say dear sir or madam.
No, well, you wouldn't do dear sir or madam for reasons that we've already explained, that's not a good formula. Let's just say head of visa service, U.S. Embassy, Bangkok. See. Visas and embassies have very full instructions about how to contact them. So in other words, they are they tell you how they want you to write to them. So usually there's no mystery about that. I mean, I don't know what embassy you're trying to, but to contact, contact us, to contact a customer service representative, blah, 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 or use the contact information below. Email address should be directed to support Thailand. So that here they have the email address, right? And if you're dealing with an office where they are not giving you the names, or even perhaps an embassy is slightly different in those senses, you would still not write dear sir or madam. You could start the email in this sense, hello, hello dash, because they are getting these requests and they know what you want, basically, because you've already written to the correct email address. And you, in this particular case of embassies, because of security issues, and other, then you want to, that didn't work. But I think in other cases where you're writing to an embassy, for example, U.S. or let me say Austrian Cultural Council, Bangkok. Austrian Embassy, Bangkok. Usually, there will be a listing of the different embassy personnel, and they will, in fact, give you the names of the different people who work there. So it does take sometimes a little bit of a search, but the consular section, the political, and again, you could call and ask, who is the person I should send it to? I want to direct this to a person, and they will, at some point give you a name. But if you go back to what I was talking about before about why you should not use dear sir or madam in your Google, one of them says, there is no excuse, do not use, really there is no example of when you should use dear sir or madam. It is unacceptable as a formula. What next?
Okay, I have a concern about why we have to avoid dear full name. I would like to know how about.
Well, I think in a little bit, one of the reasons why that sounds strange now to the standard English, international English speaker is it is no longer something that people say, if they ever said. And in the same way, we don't come up to our friend, oh, you see Kunjun at the shopping mall, and you say, hello, sir or madam. You know, that you don't say that. And you also don't say someone's complete name. It almost sounds, I guess the word would be pedantic if you give the full name of the person. I mean, because if you're talking, let's say, about Pue Umpakorn, you would say Dr. Pue, you would say Pue Umpakorn, but you wouldn't say each time you mention his name, Dr. Pue Umpakorn, because it would seem like you're kind of a little bit repeating yourself in that sense. You don't have to say the full name of someone in that way. Dr. Pue, or if it's an American or a Farang, you would say, use their last name. But you would not write Dear Pue, just not the style. It's not a terrible mistake. If you really love to do that for whatever reason, feel free, make yourself happy, go crazy. But I think in general, it is not done anymore. Yeah.
The next one is, are there any gender neutral pronouns I could use in the email?
A gender aware person, good for you. Well, I would say the great solution, first of all, unfortunately in Thai English, you often see he, which again is, you forget about women entirely. And there are, after all, more women than men in the world. I would say the best solution for gender neutral pronouns is plurals. They, and make everything plural. So whatever you're talking about is to use the plural tense. And then you have if each student or let's say, each student who takes the exam goes to his home afterwards, something like that. Now, instead of saying that, we could say all students who take the exam go to their home. See, all students who take the exam go to their home afterwards. So there, it's no longer his or her. And by making it plural, you also don't have to use the very awkward his, her, which sometimes you see in non-native English writing, or just awkward English writing. It's complicated to write his, her each time. Better to make it plural and say all students who take. You do have to change all of the sentence usually when that happens. Take the exam, go to their home afterwards. So that would be the easiest solution to make it plural.
Okay. The next question is there any sentences better than please be informed?
Yeah, that's Thai English. And another thing, which is I have in a later PowerPoint, but we don't have time. We really have enough for a whole nother class. If anyone's interested, we could do another class about this. But in Thai emails, office emails, in every Thai email at the end, please be aware of this. Please be informed about this type of message is a line that says, please pay attention to this. That does not exist in English language emails. You do not say, please be aware of this, because when you sent the email, you assume they're aware of it. You don't have to tell them again, be aware of it. That's why you're sending them the email, and you do not have to add the extra line, please be aware of this. It's just enough to say, this is it. Now, your question was, wait, what was the question?
This one.
Please be informed that. Yeah, please be informed that is it's a little too, perhaps a little too bossy. Sounds like we're sort of, telling people in a somewhat commanding way, that we're ordering them around, we're forcing them to do things they don't want to do. So you could just say, this is just to say that, if you want to be sort of friendly and polite, or please note that. Now, please note actually is much nicer than please be informed. We are informing you. It sounds like you're about ready to kill someone. If you say please note, it just says, please notice what I'm telling you. If you be nice, please note that all students who take the exam must go to their home afterwards. Please note is a short way of saying in only 2 words, and instead of saying please be informed that, which is 4 words. So anything that's shorter is already better. You save time and you don't have to spend so much effort. So that's how I would resolve that. Please be informed that. Yeah.
Okay, but the next question is, why don't we indent and make space between lines and emails?
Well, that's a good question, but I think one of the reasons why you don't have indentation and spaces between lines is the message is short, and it's not that difficult to tell the difference between where one line ends and the next one begins. And if you have too many spaces, let's say, people might think, oh, the email's finished, or that's the end of the email, and then they might not notice what's after the spaces. So it may seem a little crunched up together, but in fact, unless it's a very long email, in which case you can indent or make an extra paragraph. There's no law that says you can't add an extra space if the email looks confusing. If it's such a long email, but then again, if it's that long, you may wish to send it as a Word document attachment. You may wish to send a series of emails, perhaps 3 or 4 emails about different related subject matters, and number them, subject 1, subject 2, and in that way you can organize the information in a way that on the one hand will not make too long an email so that it's confusing to read and respond to it. Because if you have different subjects, chances are you also need different types of explanations or answers. And so for that reason, you may wish to divide the email according to subject matter and have subject 1, subject 2, subject 3 in different emails. Please, I will be sending you 3 emails about related subjects involved with our discussion of, then you give the date. And then you say subject 1 email, subject 2 email, subject 3 email, third and final email, third and last email, and make it clear that that's all 3 out of 3. Make it clear that that's the full amount of emails that you're going to send them. And that's one way to keep the emails shorter, but also deal with all the subjects that you want to handle in your emails.
Okay, the next one is, do you have any recommended resources to learn collocation?
Well, again, because Google is your friend, remember? So, collocation. Just Google it. Then you find all sorts of resources in Thai and in English, but that's, I think, more of a linguistics question rather than a specifically involved with writing professional emails. I mean, in terms of, here's how words go together. This is the Cambridge Dictionary. She has blonde hair, not she has beige hair. So in a professional email, probably you would not say she has beige hair. It's the most familiar and common use of the English language. And I think collocation is something you get an instinct for the more you read in a foreign language. So the more you read in English, then it will look familiar to you or strange if it's something you've never seen before. And then you can Google it, because you can Google, blonde hair, and you see that there's 89 million mentions of blonde hair and lots of pictures of blonde hair. But if you Google beige hair, which is a little unusual, you find, well, actually there are beige hair. People do discuss beige hair, but it's only 221,000 sort of, beige hair compared to blonde hair. So there, even the Cambridge Dictionary might be a little out of date, because now we do have people who want to have beige hair. So in fact, it shows how language changes. At the fashion salon, people have already decided, yes, I want beige hair, or I want beige blonde hair. Whereas the Cambridge Dictionary, just a few years ago, whenever they wrote this, said, no, you don't say she has beige hair. Whereas in fact, in salons today, you do say she has. So language is always changing. There's no, there are some rules that are still very much in effect, but then other things change. Yeah. So by simply Googling collocation, and I guess you're not a Thammasat student, so you don't have access to our research databases, but you can also do just basic look in Google Books, collocations dictionary, there you are for student English, lexical collocation analysis. It depends how sophisticated your research is, but you have a lot of, and you want to look for the books which give you a preview, so at least you could read a few pages in each of these studies about collocation. And then you have access to a lot of different books about collocations, and then you can take it from there and decide what is most interesting for you. You can even sometimes find an interesting video, although not always. The level is not always great in the videos, especially about language, for many different reasons. But so I wouldn't necessarily recommend looking for videos. But I think if you look at Google Books and you look at the general Google search, you will find more than enough material to read and be informed. But that's more of a general style question than specifically about, I think, than about professional emails.
Okay, the next one is some Thai people use Dear Kun. Is it okay?
It's wonderful. I think Dear Kun is very nice because, and it's even better than Mr. or Ms. because it could be anything. It could be a man, could be a woman. Right, no gender, or all genders. However, if you are writing to a farang, if you're writing to an international office or person who is overseas, be sure that they will know what kun means, because not everybody knows what kun means. So if you're writing kun, at least if it's, to someone who is in Thailand, they'll probably know what kun means. But if you're writing to someone, in Singapore or in Bhutan, probably safer to do Mr. or Ms. Unless they clearly know something about writing, or about the sort of style in Thai language. These sort of questions are very good, but it really depends on the individual. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many times in Thai English I've seen people wrote, it costs it costs 23,000 baht. Now, obviously, Thai people know the difference between a baht and baht, but many Thai people writing English will write baht just because they don't pay attention, to the correct spelling of baht. So again, it's a word that is so familiar that people think they don't have to look at it when they write it. Whereas In fact, it's a little word like that that can sometimes deceive us, bath and bot. Anyway, next.
Okay, could I ask about emailing with two languages, such as emailing with both English firstly and then write with Thai translated version in the email? Is it appropriate, and when is it appropriate?
Well, I think it all depends on what you're writing, and it would depend on the specific context. Certainly, if the people you're writing to, at least some of them, or someone there knows Thai, it's polite to write both, probably. But again, it depends. I mean, if it's a very serious email and has to do with, governments making international statements, then usually there are more than one language. I mean, as you know, the United Nations sends out communiques in French and English, in different languages. So fine, absolutely. It's perfect to send in different languages, as long as the translation is correct. Because if you have the English and the Thai and they seem to mean two different things, it can be a little confusing for the person who's reading it, if they know both languages. But I would be very careful about not just sending Google Translate, because although, as I've mentioned, Google search can be our friend, Google Translate is not exact. It's not at all representative, as you probably know. It gives you an idea of what the original text was from one language to another. It gives some idea, but it is not representative at all of standard writing. And so you can't really use Google Translate in that type of context. In the Thammasat University Library Abstract Editing Service, we ask for the text in English, because we're an English language abstract editing service. But then we also ask, if it exists, we ask for the Thai language version as well. And in the case where the person, either for various reasons, cannot produce an English language version or has only a Thai language version, we recommend using Google Translate as a beginning step as better than nothing. So whatever they want to send us, but it does have to be in English, because we're an English language editing service, and it's up to the person who wrote it, the student or the adjarn, what exactly they wish to submit. But so in that case, yes, absolutely, we would ask for English and Thai both, because that to have both can help understand the meaning. But in a message like a professional email, it is a courtesy, and it's polite, and it's helpful to send in both languages, Thai and English, especially if whoever will receive the email, there's someone there who would be able to read Thai, for example, as opposed to maybe an office in a country where you do not expect there to be any Thai language readers, But again, it would depend on the individual case. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is, do we have to be careful what word we have to use, such as thanks, thank you, very regards, best wish, with full reason?
Well, that's in the second part of this this presentation, the closing salutation, and it's a long subject. It's less offensive than the greeting at the beginning, so you're okay. But there are certain fine points which can be discussed at some length if everyone would like to hear about them. But it's up to you. It's really up to you.
Okay. Could I write the abbreviation of His Excellency in an official email?
Well, I think that's a good question too, because I see far too many in Thai English, far too many abbreviations. His Excellency HE, of course, we all know that. And but in a formal English, because if you're writing to an official email to someone who is Your Excellency, means an ambassador usually, that is the most formal and the most respectful and the most polite and the most dignified email that you could possibly write, really, apart from maybe writing to a great religious leader, to the Dalai Lama or the the Pope or someone like that, you know, where you're writing Your Holiness or your, you know, because again, but before I get to that, let me just say, answer your question directly. It is always more respectful to write out the full term. His, with capitals actually, His Excellency, or why not, Her Excellency, because if it's a woman ambassador, it's Her Excellency. Now, an example at the university level, heads of state, heads of government, governors, ambassadors, certain church people, royalty. Far too many in Thai English do this, students do this, assistant prof, doctor, like that, and then, you know, name. Very bad impression, because first of all, it makes it seem like, oh, well, my Ajarn has these professional names, but I can't be bothered to type them out. I'm in much too big a hurry. I can't be bothered. I'm just going to write past prof. You know, your Ajarn worked very hard for these professional credits. So take the time to write out assistant professor, please, you know, assistant professor. And unlike German, because English is not German, people do not write assistant professor, doctor, usually. They write assistant professor, the name, comma, and then PhD, or if it's a lawyer, faculty of law person can have a PhD or can have an LLD, a legal degree. And the way you find out whether now this is almost correct because it should have assistant professor spelled out, but it has the PhD at the end of the name, right? This is not correct for English because it has the doctor in the middle of the name instead of being PhD. What we can often find in a Ajarn's biography is what kind of degree they have. They'll list in their CV, PhD, LLD, whatever. Here it is, PhD in economics. So we know this Ajarn has a PhD, Ajarn Kanika has a PhD. So we're very safe in writing assistant professor or whatever she is, doctor, PhD at the end. We don't have to worry. And again, this took us 10 seconds. You know, it's very quick. So there's no need to get it wrong, you know, and to give someone a PhD if they have an LLD or an MD. You know, some people are MD because they work at the Faculty of Allied Health Services or they work at the Faculty of Nursing. So what you have is an MD or Doctor of Nursing or any, you know, many different doctorates are possible. And by spending 5 seconds to do the name search for the Ajarn, it shows we respect them, we respect their educational achievement, and it makes all the difference because they look at the email and they say, oh, this person actually cared about my education, you know, and as an interested in the fact that I have a PhD instead of an LLD, whatever it is, you know, and it makes a good impression.
Okay, next one, please kindly see the attached files. Can I use these in email?
Have they sent us an attachment to that? Or?
Yeah, please kindly see the attached files.
Which?
Like this word. Can they use these in
Oh,
email?
use that
Yeah.
phrase. Oh,
Yeah, like this one.
right. You would say something like, please see the attached. See, because when you start to type out, please see the attached, this often happens in Google. It actually gives you the phrase, please see the attached file. Please see attached file, as requested. See, those are all options. Please see attached file. Please see the attached. And that can be either in parentheses or please see the attached file as per your request. Please see the attached picture for your reference. This is a little too fancy. Perusal is a little fancy English, so I would say not don't do perusal. Spelling it correctly would be a problem. Please see the attached for your review. Please see the attached for your review and comments. In other words, we want feedback. We want to know what you think of this, you know. And if it's going to be in a language they don't expect, you could say, please see the attached document in Thai language. Please see the attached in Thai language, you know. Please see the attached updated file, and so on. So there's many options which Google will tell you, because these are the most common. You know, please see the attached file. I mean, 2 billion times people have written that, you know, it's very common, you know. That's almost as many as have downloaded Gangnam Style, right? Please see the attached file as per your request. 55 million times that appears. You know, these are very common phrases in standard international English. Please see the attached file as requested. 115 million results. You know, there isn't much originality in these. You just use the standard thing that people use. And if you try to be too inventive and too creative, it can be confusing because people don't know what you mean. So really better to use the sort of boring standard. And again, if you Google a phrase that you don't know, or you're not sure about, or you're not confident about, people will have asked that question quite often, and you can look up what they say. 20 less annoying synonyms and alternatives to please find attached. So if it's already too boring to say, please find the attached, you can say it in other ways, you know. That these people think it, you know, it's a little too old-fashioned. So I've attached, I'm sharing with you. You know, if you want to be more creative, you can be. But it's fine to just say standard, you know, to not be too mysterious or too complicated. Well, now we've gone to 2 hours. What do you think, Julian? People have suffered enough. Another question?
This is the last question.
Okay, last question,
Okay.
last question.
Should we have your recommendation on any specific book or resources that will be helpful for word choice?
Word choices. Okay, well, that's another good question. You know, a lot of these issues, first of all, are always changing. So books can sometimes be out of date, even if you spend the money for them, and they're not always cheap, so they could be expensive. So you might want to first do a Google search and see what people recommend, sometimes at university websites and others, about words, here's the BBC word choice, different advice, sort of other, here's another university. When it's EDU, of course, it's a university. Here's another university word choice suggestion thing. But again, you can look a little bit at Google Books and see what word choice errors, any view, you want preview and full view, and looking at word choice, and then you can see if the book gives you what you need, because I don't know exactly what you need in terms of word choice, what you're choosing them for, what is the purpose, what kind of words you're looking for. So if I knew all of that, I would be able to give you a more precise answer in terms of what is the most useful. But in general, you will probably recognize, or you'll know more or less what you want. Some of them may be a little too funny. This one looks like a humorously enlightened, trying to be a little too much Sanok, you know. This is more serious, Fowler's Dictionary of Modern English Usage, you know, rhetorical style. So it depends what level of word choice you're looking for. Very serious, not so serious. Is it for young students? Is it for older students? Is it for a John? Oops. And yeah. And so it really depends what you need, and you know that best. So yeah. So I hope that helps. Now, if you would like another class, let us know. You know, write in and just let us know. I'm sure we could probably arrange something and do the rest of our PowerPoints. Or we have another class also, as you may know, on next Friday,
17th, yes.
the 17th, which is all about the exciting subject of resumes. And believe it or not, even people who are not looking for a job should have a resume, an updated resume. Even people who are just students can use a resume for applying for internships, for applying for graduate studies, for applying for the job during the vacation from classes. And people can use a resume to get an overall sense of where their career is going and what their personal goals are. It's like a personal diary. So in fact, a resume is a very useful thing to have for many different people. And so anyway, there's all sorts of little hints and little secrets about resumes, and that will be next week, 1 week from today on Friday at 9:30. And Kun Pipapan will also be our wise helper and arranger for that as well. And it's free, like this one, and very easy to scan. The cat loves you, as you see. And that will be next week, followed on the 23rd of this month, June, about still another seminar.
We will do the announcement on Facebook and email.
Right, so those are already scheduled over these next couple of weeks. And then if enough people would like still more information about writing professional emails, just let us know. And if there's enough demand, if there's enough people who care, we can probably add that on later on, if that would help. But anyway, so there.
Okay, I think today we spent enough time, I think a little bit late. So
Yes.
Thank you so much, Kun Benjamin,
My
today
pleasure.
for your
My
useful
pleasure.
information.
So-
It's really useful, so we can use what you teach us for the official email, for office email. So before we end the session, please can I share my screen? Okay. Before we end the session, please kindly do the certification survey for the improvement of our workshops and training in the future. So if you have any topics that you would like the library to have that for you, so you can fill in the information at the survey.
And I wanted to show the last slide.
Okay, 1 moment. Let's maybe can share your screen.
Oh, okay. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thanks for your attention and your time today, So see you next topics about preparing resume.
On
Okay, thank you everyone.
Friday,
17th.
June 17th at 9:30 a.m. Same time, same channel.
Okay, thank you.
Bye now.